Hello, it's my pleasure to chat with you today. This session of mine is broken up into three parts. One, why we need your help in science and engineering. Two, digital realities. And three, using Unity to create your own reality. So I would recommend that you take these in blocks, maybe take a short break in between. They're running about 20 minutes long each. So let's get started. Part one, why we need your help in science and engineering. First, who am I? Why should you even consider listening to me? So hello, my name is Oscar Castillo. I live here in Burbank, California, which is part of Los Angeles County. I was originally born in Peru, though, a rather large country in South America. I am an immigrant. I moved to the US when I was about 2 months old with my two sisters and my parents. I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida, in a double-wide trailer on a dirt road. My father was a mechanic and my mother worked in childcare. We were not what you'd call wealthy, but we're always blessed with food, shelter, and family. I went to public schools and not what you'd call the good school in town. Usually poor school filled with poor to middle class kids. Despite that, I attended Florida State University and received my bachelor's and master's degree in mechanical engineering. While in school, I worked in a lab as a material science researcher, doing experiments, writing papers, those kind of things. After school, I moved here to Los Angeles and began working at the Northrop Grumman Corporation for their Space Systems division. And I've been there ever since. It's been 16 years now. At that group, we focus on building space satellites for national defense and also civil space programs, which are usually focused on space exploration as partnerships with NASA. I've worked as a mechanical designer of electronic systems, as a manufacturing engineer and assembly line manager of those electronic systems. I've also been a lab manager, and now I'm a project manager. My job now is literally to go out into the world, learn about new technologies, and bring them back and use them to help our teams operate more efficiently, produce higher quality products. I am very fortunate and thankful for my career, and in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm just getting started. So yes, you and I are different, but after hearing a little bit of my story, maybe you can see that maybe we're not that different from one another. If you take nothing else from what I say today, take this. Like me, you can build the future that you want. And it's not easy and it's not always fair, but it is within your reach, I promise. So I'm an engineer. What is an engineer? You may be curious. Well, engineering is the application of math and science to solve real world problems. This typically involves creating, improving, advising, or analyzing something. I really appreciate the acronym STEAM. It's a little corny, but it is actually important. So if you're not familiar, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. I personally love the addition of technology and art. Many engineers don't work in pure math and science anymore. Usually we're leveraging or building upon technology. I know I do. And it's the use of technology is a really big piece of the puzzle. Now, art, the aesthetics, the look and feel, the user experience, so incredibly important in our world today, especially if you're designing a product for humans, which we do that quite a bit. You know, from cell phones to new spacesuits to automobiles, everything in between. Humans want beautiful, functional, inspiring products. So if you have an appreciation for the arts, you have a seat at the table. Now, there are different types of engineering. When I was choosing my major to focus on in college, I could count the number of engineering options on one hand, but not anymore. There are the classic engineering types, electrical, mechanical, civil, chemical, but now there are so many more options. Computer, industrial, biomedical, materials, optical, power, supply chain, the list goes on and on. The world has become complex and nuanced, and so have the problems we need to solve. The bottom line, there are lots of options to suit a person's strengths, interests, and passion. The catch, well, they all depend on a mastery of math and science. Now, don't roll your eyes or turn off the video just yet. Give me 5 minutes to explain why I would argue each and every one of you is a scientist and a mathematician. Everyone is a scientist. Ugh, math and science are too hard. I'm just not good at math. Science is so boring. I'm a father of two elementary school kids. I've heard these three and many more. I'm no stranger to that. The truth is, it is hard to teach math and science. And my hats go off to all the teachers out there that make math and science fun and interesting. You teachers, you're doing an awesome job. Keep it up. Let me break this down for you. Science is not just memorizing a bunch of facts. Far from it. The word science comes from the Latin word for knowledge. A scientist is a seeker, a collector, an applier of knowledge. Science is all about exploration and discovery. It always has been. And those pursuits, those two in particular, so incredibly human. I mean, it's why you can find humans on almost every patch of land on this earth. Even in the ocean. Even in space. There are people on the International Space Station, calling space home for months at a time out of the year. Amazing. We humans cannot be stopped in our pursuit of our curiosities. We must find the answer. We want to know what's over that hill, what's under that rock, what's inside of this volcano, everything. I'm convinced that every human on this earth is born with this curiosity and drive. So, if that's true, we're all scientists. Some of us just get paid to do it. But why is it so boring? Well, to understand where you're going, let's say you are trying to make it over that hill. To understand where you're going and how best to get there, it's smart to look back to see where you've come from. It's smart to talk to the people who've already gone through this trail and understand what they have encountered. So that's why you have to learn about Newton, Einstein, Jane Goodall, Marie Curie, George Washington Carver, Valerie Thomas, and Carlos Juan Finlay. Not just to pass a test, but to build on their accomplishments, to take the next step to get over that hill. But what about math? If everyone is a scientist, then I'm going to say everyone can learn math. I know, it doesn't sound realistic. Oh, sure, it works for you, Mr. Castillo, but I'm different, right? I personally think math gets a bad rap. Math is so incredibly interesting to me. It was literally invented by scientists for science. Right? So let me tell you a story. Years ago, most people were farmers. There was this one guy, his name was Euclid, and he didn't know how to measure his own farmland. No one did. It hadn't been invented yet. He literally invented geometry to measure the area and perimeter of his land. Isn't that crazy? He had no idea how he was going to change the world or how many kids would groan saying how much they hated geometry. Math is a tool, a scientist's tool, and it helps us to describe the world that we're exploring, that we're learning about. It's also like a special language, a universal language. It doesn't matter where you're born. All humans can learn and speak this language of math. Just like science, though, remember, building on the ideas of past scientists, math builds on principles. It stacks one principle on top of another. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're in a car and a big rock hits the underneath the car, and hits your oil pan and you start leaking oil out of the car. Right? So let's say you want to calculate how fast you're losing oil. When will the crankshaft no longer be lubricated because the oil level has gone down? Will you make it to the mechanic? How fast are you driving? Good luck trying to solve that, calculus problem if you haven't learned geometry yet and you can't approximate the volume of that oil pan. One depends on the other. And this stacking of math and science principles makes both harder to teach. So your struggle today may not have anything to do with today's lesson, but perhaps you didn't understand last week's lesson or last year's lesson. You can't build on what you don't know. I mean, think about it like trying to climb a ladder and there's missing rungs along the way. How can you make that leap? Usually you can't. You have to get off the ladder, fix the ladder, add those rungs back into place. We have to do the same thing with our education. If there's elements that you missed along the way, you may have to take a step back and relearn those elements. It seems difficult and daunting, unfair. Don't worry. It can be done. Anything can be learned. I promise you. Another reason why math in particular is hard to teach and learn. Math can be very abstract. What is abstract? A definition of abstract is existing in thought or as an idea, but not having a physical or concrete existence. Cannot be experienced through the five senses. So it's in your mind. It's not in the real world. It's imaginary. It represents something. When math is taught using only numbers, it becomes very, very abstract. I know. You've heard about how smart humans are and how we're really good at abstract thinking. It's true. We're probably the best on the planet. Here, I'll do a little test. Let's see you check your abstract thinking. Now, imagine a red elephant, full out red, and it's driving a monster truck, big black monster truck, tough. And it's driving through your school. Can you picture that in your mind? If you can, then you just had an abstract thought because it's not real. Elephants aren't red. They can't drive. The truck probably wouldn't fit in your school. It's not here. It's not tangible. It's only in your mind. It's abstract. We're really good at that, but we have our limits. Let's try another test. Do you know what two little marbles? Do they still make marbles anymore? Imagine two marbles in your mind. You can probably imagine that. What does that look like? Okay, imagine what does 200 marbles look like? Imagine a pile. How big is the pile? What do 200,000 marbles look like? Can you picture that accurately? Most people can't. Numbers are very abstract, and it's easy to lose connection to the real world if you're only talking in numbers. And the further we are from the real world, the further we are from science and the intent of trying to explain the world using math. And that's the whole purpose, remember? Things get pretty hard and pretty boring as a result. So my advice to you, of course, listen to your teachers, study hard, but when possible, ground math in the real world. For example, let's imagine that a school bus, you have a typical school bus, and you fill it with marbles. And let's say this school bus can only hold exactly 100,000 marbles. Not one more, not one less. Okay, 100,000. Now if I ask you, hey, can you imagine what 200,000 marbles look like? I bet it's a little easier because it's grounded in the real world. Here's my point. We are all curious and capable explorers of our world, of our surroundings. Sure, it's hard to learn math and science, but the future world needs your help. Your country, your community, we all need your help. What do I mean? We need your help. What's Mr. Castillo even talking about? See, you kids might not think I'm talking to you. You in the back especially, see, you're not paying attention. You probably don't think I'm talking to you, but I am. I'm talking to every single one of you. See, the second part of my message that I'm going to share with you is this concept of digital realities. And I promise you it's way more interesting than what we're talking about right now. But those ideas depend, they are depending on innovative minds. And that is the key. That is why we need you. We need your minds. What am I talking about? Well, so right now I'm filming this in Burbank, California, like I said, during the first week of June 2020, amidst the worldwide outcry against police brutality of people of color, specifically African Americans in this country. Now, as a result, I can't help but see the connection between our need for innovative minds and the benefits of diversity when it comes to innovation. These are two concepts, a need and how diversity helps us achieve that need. Let me explain what I'm talking about regarding diversity of thought and how it helps innovation. You and I are different. When we encounter life, we see it through our own eyes, and our eyes are shaped by our life, our culture, our experiences. That means we see the world differently. We are different. We see the world differently. So when we encounter a problem that needs solving, we can draw upon our different backgrounds for different innovative solutions. Imagine if you put 10 people in a room and you asked them to solve a problem. These 10 people came from the same city, they are the same sex, same race, went to the same schools, went to the same summer camps, interned at the same company, played for the same sport league. You're probably going to get a lot of the same answers. Now, to break through the way we need to in the future, you need different answers from a mixture and different people. We need you, all of you. Now, I did some research. There was a study by the National Science Foundation in 2018. You might find this interesting. And it looked at women and minorities in science and engineering jobs between 1998 and 2015. Now, in 2015, women only had 28% of the science and engineering jobs out there, even though women were graduating from college in equal numbers as men. If you looked at engineering jobs by themselves, women only had 14% of those jobs. Now, looking at race, Hispanics above the age of 21, right, so it's after college, they only made up 15% of the population. But we only had 6% of the science and engineering jobs. Follow me? African Americans above 21 made up 12% of the populations. They only had 5% of the science and engineering jobs. Now, people of Asian descent above 21 made up only 6% of the population, but had 21% of the science and engineering jobs. Good job, guys. I'm sorry for all the abstract numbers. Hopefully the charts help a little bit. What I'm trying to say is that we need people of diverse backgrounds. And as a country, we're not doing a good job of producing that. We need all of you. In September of 2018, the Forbes magazine wrote an online article entitled America's High-Tech STEM Crisis. STEM. Before they called it STEAM, it was called STEM. In the article, they talked about a race, a worldwide race to train and employ scientists and engineers. It turns out in 2016, China produced 4.7 million STEM graduates. India in 2017, the following year, produced 2.6 million. And the United States came in third with only 568,000 engineers and scientists. Now, America has been a leader in technology for many, many years, and we're in great danger of losing that edge. And as a result, not being able to help shape what our new world will look like. This is why I say we need all of you. The second part of our discussion today is entitled Digital Realities. So what do I mean by digital realities? Well, it's a term I've been using to capture a collection of ideas and technologies. Some of them you're familiar with, and some are still taking shape. So let's dig in. I'll explain along the way. Digital realities describing a fantasy world, the first example. Now, the first time I began hearing about this concept was in 2010, about 10 years ago. I think the Avatar DVD was just released. I don't know if you guys remember that movie. I was learning a little bit about how the movie was made, and I was amazed at the new technologies that had to be created to make the film. Now, green screens had been around for some time, and even motion captures, people in the funny suits with the balls and the markers, they'd been used before. But what I was learning about was something new. But before I get into that, let's take a step back. So way back when, in the classical world of animation, they were made with drawings. One drawing for every frame of animation. So for a 5-minute cartoon, just hundreds and hundreds of individual drawings. And then back in the day before computers, that was very, very manual. Now, what's important in that medium of using a hand-drawn image is that you were seeing the artist's vision from the perspective that they wanted to show you. Now, if an artist wanted to change that perspective, let's say they wanted to look at, this, maybe they made a piece of artwork with a plant in mind, and they were looking at it from this angle, the way you're looking at it. Well, if they changed their mind and they wanted to look at it from this angle or this angle, well, they'd have to start all over because it's hand drawn. They'd have to create the drawing all over again. Pretty time consuming. Now, when computers arrived, it made that process a little easier, right? You could maybe zoom in, move around a little bit. Also, the presence of computers just allowed for more creative expression. But still, you really had to plan out every frame before you set out to create it. Then things changed. Using computers, people started animating 3D models and telling stories using them. Toy Story was released in 1995, and that was the first feature-length computer animated movie. To build that movie, they created elements of a 3D world inside of a computer, and then they created a virtual camera that lived in that world, and it allowed you to see into that world. In that case, if you wanted to change the angle that you were looking at Buzz Lightyear or at my plant, you simply needed to move your virtual camera at a different angle. But you didn't have to recreate the model from scratch or the drawing from scratch. Instead, you simply move the camera around. Now, it still took a long time back then to render those 3D models. It's kind of hard to explain what rendering means, but essentially, if you started out with a model and you wanted to animate it and move it, you could tell the computer what that was going to look like, and then you had to execute that function, and it would take time for it to figure out what it would look like and to produce a final result. It was not what we call now real-time rendering. It was kind of maybe a batch rendering, or you plan out all the movements in advance and you let the computer figure it out, and then you go look at the results. If you didn't like those results, well, you had to go back, make some changes, press the button, get some lunch, and then come back and look at the results again. It was a tedious, time-consuming process. This was really the reason for that. It was a limitation of computers back then, and the software that went with it. But still, big difference, big step forward in terms of easiness compared to hand drawing. Right? You're no longer having to draw thousands and thousands of sketches. So when I was watching the making of the Avatar movie on the DVD, I saw that 3D models were being rendered in close to real time. Maybe not the finished quality that we saw in the movie theater, but still the models were moving and the camera was moving, and you saw the motion in real time. It was almost like looking at like how I use this camera right now. You can see me moving. I'm moving and the camera's capturing it right now. It was akin to that rather than the what I described before, where you plan everything out, you press a button, and then you come back to see the results. So what was really amazing was that they were combining motion capture technology. Remember those markers and those balls that are on those funny suits? They were combining that technology with the virtual camera idea. Remember I said you had Buzz Lightyear and you wanted to look at him differently, so you moved around a make-believe camera in the computer. They smashed those ideas together, and they did it in real time. I know this is kind of confusing. I'll try to explain what I mean. So imagine it was like there was some invisible world, like it's there, They're using a camera to look into it, but you can really only see it using this special camera, right? Using this motion tracking camera. So using this system, it allowed you to look into this virtual world, this world that you can't see with your own eyes. You're using this virtual camera to look into it. And as a young engineer, I was really fascinated by that idea, that there's an imaginary hidden world, and we can actually move in that world and have impact on that world. And this was kind of related to what virtual reality is, right? You move a camera, and then what you see, it's almost like you're looking inside of that other world. And virtual reality, had been invented or first experimented with many years before Toy Story or Avatar. But this was the first time I was learning about any of these things. I didn't really know much about VR at the time. So the funny thing is that I was a young design engineer, and I was actually creating my own 3D models, but they weren't of Buzz Lightyear or Avatar characters. I was a design engineer of electronic systems, so my models were models of the electronic systems that I was designing. And I used those 3D models to communicate how to manufacture and assemble my designs. I could use models to take measurements with and conduct thermal, structural, geometrical tolerance analysis. Very useful. My 3D modeling tool also allowed me to add lighting and reflection and different surface finishes to my models and create some really beautiful still images. But to create those, it often took even my high-powered engineering workstation computer 10 to 15 minutes to render. Remember that word, render? And that's just one image, right? In a movie is a collection of images. Each frame of a movie, of a video, is one still image. But if you play them fast enough, then you get animation and video. I was just trying to make one image, and it would take me 10 minutes to render. So I appreciated this idea of real-time rendering when I heard about what was going on with the movie. I thought it was amazing. So movies have come a long way since then, and their virtual digital realities have become more and more amazing to watch, really. Digital realities in our world is different from digital realities in a fantasy world. So let's talk about that for a moment. So movie studios are creating these digital realities in the computers, and we can look into that world using a computer monitor or VR glasses or like the special motion tracking camera. But let's turn that concept like inside out. You and I live in this real world, right? But we can allow a computer to look into our world using cameras and sensors. I'm using it right now. I have a camera and it's connected to my computer, and the computer is taking in input from the real world. Remember that virtual camera idea? Well, the way it works, fascinating really. They put visual markers on a camera. So here's a good example. So here's a camera, right? It's actually a video camera, and they put markers. Imagine stickers all over this camera, and then imagine that there were 40 or 50 other cameras all around my room here, in every orientation, and it was pointing at me in the center, and it captured all the motion that happened in my studio film set here. So hence the term motion capture. Now, the motion capture cameras were watching the markers on the single camera, on this camera in the center. They then pushed all that video from all of the cameras into the computer. And then the filmmakers wrote a computer program to recognize the markers on the camera. Right? So once the computer could see the movement of the markers, one frame at a time, one image at a time, it knew exactly where and how to move the digital camera inside of the computer. So what the end result was, if I was pointing into this digital world, even though I was in the real world, and when I moved this camera, these cameras around me saw the movement of the markers. It understood how the camera was moving, and then it told the virtual camera inside of the digital world to move with it. So in that way, I was able to, and this is what James Cameron did in Avatar, and George Lucas did in Rogue One. They were able to move a camera in that digital world. It's an amazing idea, crazy idea. So this is an example of computers sensing our world, and is essential to building digital realities in our world. That's like, to me, that's step one. The computer has to understand our world for us to bring the digital elements into our world. I'll talk more about what that means. But first, let me talk a little bit about, how does a computer know what a marker looks like? How do you tell it that? The answer you're looking for, if you ask that question, is it's called computer vision. Now, I'm no expert in this at all, but again, I'm incredibly curious and happy to share what I know about the subject. First of all, every image on a computer is made up of many, many pixels. And it's just like a city. Every pixel has an address. Just like a city, every home has an address. And so a way to describe its location. So now the number of pixels in that image depends on the resolution of that image. It's not super important, but regardless of that, every pixel also has a color, one single color assigned to that address. And that color has a very specific, I'll call it a formula in terms of computer speak. So for example, red. Here's an example of what a red color. And here's another red color. And you see how the numbers change in its formula? Now, if I wanted to reproduce the first red, I could type in the formula for that red, and I could get back to that first version of red. So there's this very specific formula for every color, and every pixel also has a location and a color. Right, so I mentioned that before. Every pixel on an image, every single little dot, every single location has a specific address. So the computer knows every one of these dots. And each one of them has a color associated with them. Right? So it's kind of like your typical neighborhood. Each home has an address and a family living in that home. Now, let's say I wanted to write a computer program that helped me find the one red pixel in my image. Where is it on this screen? Well, I know the formula for red, right? There's a specific formula for this red that I'm looking for. So the program could start maybe in the upper left corner of the image. And the program could ask if the formula was equal, the formula for that address, for that home, was it the same formula than what I'm looking for? I'm looking for red. Are you red? If it is, great. You found the pixel. Record the address, and you're all done. Now, if it's not red, then go to the next door neighbor, check to see if it's red, and so on and so on. Go down the list until you find the red pixel. Or you've reached the end of the image, and if that's the case, there was no red pixel. So what if you're looking for a red square in an image? It's different. Well, you do pretty much the same thing, but if I were to write a program to do that, I wouldn't stop as soon as I found the first red pixel. I'd keep going. I'd map every single one of those items, every address. I'd find all the red pixels, right? You'd continue searching the entire image until you found every pixel in that image. And you'd log the position of each red pixel. So you would know the address of every red pixel in that image. So what if you told the computer that when it sees a bunch of pixels and they're all aligned in straight lines and there's 4 sides, right? And each side is about equal length. You can tell it, hey, when you see this, you found a square. You can tell computers things like that. Not with words necessarily, but with programming. So now, remember I said earlier, a video is nothing more than a collection of still images, played really fast next to each other, just like the animated movies they used to make. So one page at a time, one frame at a time. If I had a computer, I could have it analyze each of those images, each frame, one at a time. And see, that's the beauty of computers. They're excellent at these kind of small, simple tasks that are tedious, checking every address. Very tedious, very time consuming. They love that. They gobble that stuff up really quick and they can do it really well. Perfect use of computers. Whereas it could probably take a human a long time to do that. So now if I gave my computer a short video clip and there was a square moving around in that video, the computer, if it had this program where it would look at every image, every frame, and it would sweep through every pixel and find every red pixel, and it would know when it found a square, right? It would be able to tell me, as the different frames were analyzed, how the square was moving, right? So imagine, okay, one more step. Imagine that you put a red square, a red sticker on your camera, the one that you're trying to get the computer to learn, to understand. Hey, when I move this camera, I want you to move the virtual camera. Pretend I put a red square right here. Now, and what if I put an orange square here and a green square here and a blue square here, and I covered it in a bunch of different markers. Now, do you see now the video that each of these cameras would receive? All it would have to do is run that program I'm talking about. It would have to look for a red square, and it would understand how that red square was moving. And then the camera over here would look for the orange square, and then the camera over there would find the blue square. And combine, it could know the motion of this camera. It's really amazing concept. So this is an example of computer vision, and this idea opens up the door to so much innovation. Engineers have built upon these ideas to build things like self-driving cars and the Snapchat face filters that you've probably seen. And really, that's just the beginning. We're just getting started. The computer can show where people are walking or understand how your face is moving because of computer vision. In these examples, you are looking at the real world through a camera, but you're also looking at more. You're looking at a digital reality laid on top of our real world. That concept is referred to as augmented reality. Now, the word augmented, the definition, is to have been made greater in size or value. In this case, the video of our real world is made greater in value. It is enhanced. So augmented reality is an emerging technology, and large technology companies like Facebook, Microsoft, Apple are all researching, experimenting with, and developing products for the future of augmented reality. Many industries, including space and defense industry that I'm a part of, we are actively learning about the technology, trying to find ways to harness the power to give our teams the type of superhuman vision so they can do their job more easily with better results. So in summary, digital realities can exist inside of the computer, and you can look into that world, into that computer world, but you can also let the computer look into our world and use it to enhance and augment our perception of the world. Digital realities. Hello, ready to start part 3, and that is creating your own reality using Unity. So Unity, what is Unity? Unity is a game engine that you can use to make a video game. That's how it's been used for some time now. There are, before I try to explain, let me show this video. I think it does a way better job in terms of showing what what Unity can do. Pretty interesting stuff, right? That video does a good job of displaying there's no limit to the kind of worlds that you can create, right? So there was so much variety in that video, and yeah, there's just really no limitation. It's just your imagination, really. Okay, so let's see. Obviously, you don't have to follow along and the mouse clicks that I'm going to do, but what I want to do is show you the basics of installing the software, starting a new experience or game, and how to add elements to that digital reality. So how to create your own universe. There's no way I can even do justice to this program in our short time together. I just want to show you enough to show that you can get started. And that is really the hardest part. So the other thing I need to share with you, and one of the huge benefits of Unity, there's an enormous community out there of beginners and experienced people. There's so many resources online to help you learn how to use the software. Let's see, let me start from scratch. So I'm gonna Google Unity. Oops. So you could do this yourself, and then this unity.com is what you're looking for. But look, there's a button that says Learn. So click Learn, and then you're a learner. So here it is. There's lots of different tutorials. You can open a project. I want to find the one that I first got started on, because like I said, the software can get pretty advanced. You know, the one I would point you to, this is old school, Unity Rolling Ball. So on there they have a tutorial that walks you through the basics of getting started. So if something I do today doesn't make quite sense, you can always follow this roll a ball. And there's many kind of chapters to it. Here you can find the roll a ball tutorial in Unity. And here you can watch. It's an hour and 25 minutes, but it walks you through, creating similar to what we'll do today, but it also adds elements of coding, which I'll see if I can get some basic programming in before we end today. But yeah, here are all the video to classes. I did this before I did anything. I started with this little junior project. It's a great way to start. Okay, so how do you get started? Oh, and like I said, if you don't want to, you can just simply watch and follow along. Just being around something like this, you can't help but learn. The best way to learn, though, is trying to do it yourself. and not being afraid to mess up and fail and then get back up and try again is the absolutely best way to learn. Especially a software like this, just go and try to make something, like try to make your backyard or try to make whatever, an airplane or something. Just get in there. It's an incredibly effective way at picking up skills, trying to solve problems with it. Okay, so let's say I'm at Google and I type in Unity because I want to download it, and then I click the download button. And the great thing about Unity, if you are a student and you're just using it for your personal use, you're not trying to make a bunch of money with it, you can use the personal edition. It has all the features that are available, minus some that are related to business, but all of the features that you would need, and you get it all for free. And this is a very powerful piece of software. 10 years ago, this would have been tens and tens of thousands of dollars to gain access to it, and then now they just give it away for free. And there's free training online, and there's huge community of people that want to help you learn how to use it. It's crazy. It's amazing. So the first thing you do is you'd accept these terms, and then you download Unity Hub. I already have Unity Hub installed, and so once you have it installed, now you can install a version of Unity. The reason there's probably lots of reasons why they've done it, but if you, I don't know how familiar you are with this, but maybe you have your mom or dad or yourself have a cell phone, and every once in a while it'll say, "Hey, plug me in to the power because I need to be updated." And so what they're doing is they're trying to update the software that's on the phone. This happens with computers too. It says there's an update available to install, and they're going to push the update to your computer, and they're going to update it for you, right? Or they push it to the phone and they're going to update it for you, and you don't really have to worry about it. You just press the button. Yes, I'm okay to install. I'm okay to update, and it goes. That's how phones and computers tend to get updated now. Unity also is getting updated constantly. But they don't just push updates to you, because the changes they make may totally disrupt the game that you're trying to make. So instead, you go and it asks you to go and download what you want. So you can download the latest. And let's say another version comes out, it doesn't force it upon you. You have to go and download. For you, all you really need to do is accept the terms, download Unity Hub, and then once you have Unity Hub installed, you'll launch Unity Hub, and you'll be presented with a window like this. Okay, and so here there are the projects. So if you've created any projects in the past, I've been messing around quite a bit. There's also a tab here for learning. And here, this is awesome. You can go in and download different projects, or you can look through tutorials. So again, this software has so much to it. There's so much free learning to happen. So this button add is here if you have a project that you've copied onto your computer and you want to add it to this session of Hub so that it now appears in this list. But that's not what we're doing today. We're going to create a new version. So for you, all you'll have to do is hit this new button. If you happen to have other versions of Unity installed, you can select from the list. But and that's what I'll do. But for you, you'll just hit new because you'll only have one. It'll likely be 2019.4 or later. And then after you have selected new, you'll be presented with some options for templates. For what we're doing today, and the only option I've ever used is 3D. These other options are optimized for different types of games and experiences. I would recommend, if you're interested, learning more about it. But I've always used 3D for my simple projects, so it's a great way to get started. Here you just put a name of your project. So let's say it's like summer camp, and then it says it already exists because I already created it and I already have it open. And then finally, you would put the location. So if you want to change the location, but make sure you know where that project's getting saved, so that if you need to go back to it, you need to find it, anything like that, you know where it's being kept. Usually it's in like a C documents folder. And then the name that you put here will be the name of the folder. If you need to change it, just use these three buttons right here, and then you'll hit create. I've already done that. I already have it created. Let me bring it up. Okay, when you first create, and it'll take a good minute or two to open because it's doing all these things, it's getting things ready. But you begin with this session, right? And so it looks intimidating. It's like, what's going on? What does all these buttons mean? I don't want to break it. Don't worry about it. Just get in there. You can't break it. Okay, so there's a few things. This screen in the center, this primary window, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, and it allows me to kind of move this world around. So there's already a world. It starts and there's already a universe. It's pretty empty. It doesn't have much in it, but it's like a blank slate or like a clean table. Like there's a place to build your world onto, but it's pretty empty. So as I move this around, this kind of moves the world around. I'm going to use the right mouse button, and when I hold it down, I get an eye. It's kind of weird, but now this, if you can tell, I'm actually rotating, right? And look at in the upper right corner, this weird axis thing. Looks like a bunch of horns. So as I move the camera, you can see it's moving around too. So it's a great indicator of what you're actually doing. So I'm kind of rotating, the world around. And then if I pick the left mouse button, it allows me to select something, right? So if I let go, whatever's inside that box is going to be selected. It's kind of hard to select things that way because this is 3D space, and I'm using a two-dimensional, rectangle to do that. But in this case, if what's this in the center? What is that? I can select it, and it works. It selected it. Wow, a bunch of stuff just happened. Okay, I'm gonna click away from it to unselect it. I'll tell you what that is in a second. But look, there's this other little icon over here. It looks like a mouse or like a camera. Same thing happened. Whoa, all these things are happening. What's going on? Okay, so this is what's happening. Before I talk about these elements, I'm gonna point your direction to this left part of the screen. This is called the hierarchy. And basically, let me take a step back. So, have you ever played a video game? So usually in a video game, you start the game and you're on level 1, and you have to play that game, and then you finish that game, you finish that level, you beat the boss, and then you go to level 2. Okay, so the format of the screen here is built kind of like those games. There's a level 1, and then all the monsters and bosses and good guys and bad guys that are associated with that level 1, you'll find them here in this folder, in this screen. Now, when you go to level 2, you're gonna have all new different bosses, new bad guys, good guys, different cars to drive, different things, right? And that will be again in this window, but they're separate, and they're separated by what's called scenes. And so this is called the sample scene. It automatically starts whenever I start the game when I start the project new for the first time. It creates this sample scene. So whenever I hear the word scene, I think, okay, it's kind of like a level. It's like level 1, level 2, level 3. Now down here at the bottom, there's this tab called project. Now project to me is like the whole game. So like let's say it's a Mario game, right? And so on the first level, you got to fight one of Bowser's kids, right? But in the second level, you got to beat Bowser, right? So in the game, both Bowser's kid and Bowser exist. They would be in the project directory, along with Mario and Luigi and Yoshi, all those guys. That's the whole game. They're going to be here in the project. But if I was just talking about scene 1 or level 1, I wouldn't find Bowser in it. I would only find Bowser's kid. But then I would change to scene 2, I wouldn't find Bowser's kid. I'd only find Bowser. So it's a way to organize your project. And a scene holds all the elements of that scene, but it's a container. But then you can build other containers. You can have multiple scenes, all within your big project. So within the project tab, there's actually a folder, the only folder here so far, called scenes. If I double click on there, there's a little icon here, and it's called sample scene. It's the one that I'm in, but I can create a new one. So what did I do? I right clicked in this window, and I get all these options. There's tons of things here. Create is what we're going to be using mostly today. You can create a folder. You can create this thing called a C# script, which is like a mini computer program. But what I'm going to look for is a scene. So I'm going to create it, and lo and behold, there it is. It popped up. A new scene showed up, and I'm going to call it demo for demonstration. And now I'm still in sample scene. If I want to open the demo scene, I'll double click on it. And now look, the name changed. I'm now in the demo scene. So now if I wanted to have, Bowser's kid in the sample scene and Bowser in the second level in the demo, I could do that. I could organize it, right? The other thing that's happening here, actually this is probably the only thing you really need to know for today. You have scenes, but you can create other folders too. Create folder. Let's say I wanted a sound, like every time Mario got a coin, I wanted the coin sound. So it's a good practice to organize all the files. Oh, and by the way, that coin sound, that'd be in your project too, right? If you had a piece of artwork or a piece of animation, all that would go inside your project. It would be a big mess really fast if you didn't organize it. So it's a great practice to organize using these folders. So right click, create folder, and then just name the folder whatever you want, and you're fine. The awesome thing about Unity is that it will take in MP3 wave files. It'll take JPEG pictures, PNGs, bitmaps. It'll take all these animation type files. It'll allow you to push pieces from your computer that you've built elsewhere, you've downloaded elsewhere, and it helps you to bring them together into an experience. Very, very powerful that way. Okay, so let's talk about what I'm looking at. I have a main camera, and I click on it, and it's the same thing that happened when I selected it with my cursor, with my left mouse button. Same thing with this. It's called the directional light. So that means I can select either in the window with it like this. I can click on it directly, or I can select from here. So depending on what you're doing, maybe it's really cluttered, it's hard to choose with your mouse, you could go in and select the camera directly. Okay, another big thing that's happening is every time I select something different, look at the far right part of my screen, it's flipping out. It keeps changing every time I change. And the reason why is because this is called the inspector tab. And that tab, it depends on what is selected, it'll show different information. But ultimately, it's showing the properties of what is selected. Okay? I don't want to get too deep into object-oriented programming. That's not really critical right now. But what matters is these are all the properties associated with what I've selected. And you can imagine, if I'm a directional light versus a camera, you're going to have different properties. They're two totally different things. Like on my desk right now, I have a webcam and I have a little light, and they're just going to be different. They have to be different, right? So when you go to main camera, it has it has some things that are similar. So like the position, where's the webcam? Where's the light? Both have a position. If you look at main camera, look at the inspector menu, it has this thing called a transform. But then when I select directional light, also has a transform. This is how you describe its position. And that for sure, sure enough, position, X, Y, Z. So those of you that are in higher level mathematics, you'll know that if you want to describe the position of something in three-dimensional space, you'll need three numbers, X, Y, Z. Those are the coordinates. Those are its location. Actually, this is a great way to learn those kind of concepts. So, for instance, let's say I wanted to move my directional light in three-dimensional space, right? So I have directional light selected, and I can grab one of these arrows, and when I put my mouse over it, check it out, the color changes. So look at these numbers here for directional light, 0, 3, 0. I'm going to grab this green and I'm going to pull up. And the Y, if you look at the number, the Y changes. I'm going to try to put it at 4. There, I put it at 4. So that's the Y direction. Check it out on this little cursor. I don't know if you can see it. That's also a Y there in the up direction. It's telling you, it's like a map. It's a legend for this three-dimensional map. It shows you what the colors are for the different directions. So let's say I pull the red. I see an X next to the red, so I'm expecting that X number to change. Sure enough, the X number is going to change. So if, for those of you learning about, three-dimensional locations and things like that, I don't know, this might be kind of helpful. Under light, so beyond position, there's rotation. So I can change the rotation of it. I can change the scale, how big something is. So lots of power in the transform here. And then with camera, it has the same numbers. It has position, rotation, scale. Now, the camera has a lot of other properties, which again, I'll spend hours sitting here talking about these different pieces. But I want to make a world. I want to make something. So let's make a cube. Let's say my world has a cube. So I'm going to come into the hierarchy, I'll right click, because I'm going to create something new. And it's only going to be for this scene. All right, so I'm going to create 3D object, and I'm going to create a cube. Oh, there it is. You see it? There's a cube. Now, just like the light, I can move it around. And check it out, it's selected in the inspector. All right, I can change its scale. So if you want to do more than just move its position, I got to introduce this top row of tools on top. So right now it's in the move tool, but I could select rotate. And now instead of, let me make this a little bigger. So now instead of, oh, I totally forgot. If you have a wheel on your mouse, you can zoom in and out. So that makes it also a little easier to work with. So you can select, instead of those arrows, you can select the circles and you can see it rotating. And then in the inspector, you can see it moving too. So if you can move it about where you want it, but if you didn't like it, you can say, no, I didn't like that. I'm gonna change it. I want it back to 0, whatever. You can change in all the different axes. So you can get this kind of funky shape. Oh, a funky orientation. The shape didn't change. Okay, lots of more details here. I don't have time to go into all of it. But let's say you wanted to make a world and there was nothing but cubes there, right? So maybe you wanted a bunch of cubes. So I'm going to copy, paste. And I already have it, copy, paste. I'm going to just hit Control V to be faster. That's the same thing as... And so you might be thinking like, man, I see it on the list, but I don't see them. I don't see them on the screen. Where are they? They're there, I promise. What has happened is that the transform, I copied everything, including its position. So to the computer, it says, hey, you told me to be at these weird numbers. I'm just going to be at these numbers. It's not moving them for me. So let me change the position. I'll put 0. And look, there's, oops, put that back to 3. Look, there was one hidden under there. All right, so what really is happening is I made all of these cubes, but the other ones are hidden in the place right next to it. They're all there. All right, so maybe I can start doing this. And so here it'd be really hard to select the specific cube, but I can select in this hierarchy window, and I'll get it right every time. If I were trying to select it in the window, good luck knowing which one you just selected. I think that's a couple more here. I'm just like really messing around, but let's do something else. So let me select one of these cubes, and I'm going to look to the right, and I'm going to see this thing at the bottom called material. And right now it says default material. But I don't like that color. I want to change the color. So this is how you do it. Create folder, because I want to be tidy. Material, and then within the folder material, I'm going to create a material. Did you see that? And I'm going to call this blue. Whoops. Sorry. Microphones. Okay. And now, but it's just like, yo, I called it blue, but it's not blue. What's going on? Okay, in the upper right corner here, there's this color right here. Oh, it's white. So select that white, and then you're presented with a window like this, and now you get to change it. You may be thinking like, man, it doesn't look white. Why is it looks kind of, grayish black? What's happening here? But it really has to do with the color that's near it. Honestly, lighting in Unity is kind of weird. But I promise we can make something that looks blue. So let me try to find my window again. Might have to click it again. Okay, so I'm gonna select blue, and it still looks, look at this preview in the bottom right, it still looks white, because this has to change too. So there, that looks really blue. So now I'm gonna go, and now I have a material, great, but none of the blocks on the screen changed. That's because I just made a material in my project folder. I haven't done anything in my scene. I need to apply this material that I created to the material of the cube. To do that is very, very easy. So I'm rotating around with the right mouse button, and look, it looks kind of weird. Now it's starting to look a little more like it did, like white. So I'm going to select, and I can drag it right on there. Right, I'm going to select, drag. I'm holding it with my left mouse button, letting go on the. So this is really kind of intuitive, like it makes sense to work like this. But let's say I'm not done. I want to make another color, create material, and then this is a whole nother color, and I'm going to call this one, I don't know, yellow. And so then I'm now with yellow selected, see inspector, I can go and click on this, and select yellow here, and select yellow here, and it looks yellow. And now I can go and make that. See, so like if you wanted to make a funky blue and yellow wall, and that was the world you were trying to make, we're done. We just made this digital reality. Trying to be respectful of time here. We got about 30 minutes. Okay. So this is a good first step in terms of creating your world. But something, let's jump past this. This is great. You can spend a lot of time doing things like this. You can create a 3D object sphere. There's all these different shapes that you can play around with. There's a circle right there, right? So let's say I wanted to make it really big, so I'm going to make it like 5. By the way, the units, you may think like, hey, well, what are the units? Any of you like curious in math students might know that numbers really don't mean anything unless you, in the real world, they don't mean much unless you're talking about units. Like, what is 5? What does 5 mean? So any units in this software, in the transform, position, not rotation, but position and scale, they're talking about meters. So that's the the SI system, not the US English system. It's the metric system. Okay, so I got this blue, but I'm not feeling that color. So let's go to another material. And I'll call this guy, red. And then I'll do the same thing. Choose red. Hey, but I'm not feeling that. I want something really shiny. So check out the second option here, metallic, and look at the preview on the right, on the bottom. I mean, it looks like a Christmas ornament almost. So now let me apply that. Wow, look at that. Way more shiny than my yellow and blue, if that's what you want. And look, it's applied to it, right? But I can still update it. I can select red here. I can continue messing with it. More smooth. Okay, this is great. You can create your world this way. Hey, let's make a floor real fast. So right click, create 3D object, plane is what I'm looking for. And it'll just drop the floor. And it didn't put it where I was expecting, but I'll put it in 0, 0, 0. That's a great place to put it. And I'll leave it, its standard color. It's kind of on the bottom. And maybe I don't like the size of it, so maybe I'll make it, like 10. Whoa, that's really big. Maybe 5 by 5 by 5. So now it's just to give us a floor. Let's create a material. Call it floor this time because I don't know what color it's going to be. Okay, we can give it kind of a dark gray kind of a color. Okay, let's get on to it. There are lots of other tabs in the menu here. I can't go through all of them. There's a lot involved here, but I want to take you to these two in particular. So I have a camera, and I click on the camera, and I see this strange view. Where is that coming from? That is the virtual camera that I was talking about in the second part. It's a virtual camera. It's how we are going to be looking into this world. Yeah, I get it. I'm looking in the world right now, but that's just because I'm building the world. But if you want to, what is your viewer going to see? What are the person that's going to play the game going to see? They're going to look through your virtual camera. And remember I said that example with my potted plant or Buzz Lightyear, this whole business, moving the view around. This is how you do it. I could press the rotate button, look at the preview on the screen, and now I get to literally change the perspective. Let's say I wanted to look out from top to bottom, right? So I'm gonna tip it forward, and then I'm gonna raise it up. So I'll go to the this thing. I raise it up, and now look at that. It's totally different. And wow, I'm too far away. I want to get right on top of it. Right. So this is the virtual camera. And in my example, they were doing motion tracking, right? And as they were moving the real camera around, the virtual camera was moving with it. How about these visual aids? I don't know. I'm geeking out because I really think this stuff is cool. Okay, so if you're not satisfied with this tiny view and you really want to see up close, what is your viewer going to see? Press this game tab. Game. That's it. You're looking through the virtual camera. It's right where we were before. It's right where I left it. The third tab is called the Asset Store, and I think this is probably where I'll have to leave you because I've been talking for quite a bit. The Asset Store. This is where it really does get exciting. So I'm clicking the Asset Store, and it's going to load because it's going to go out into the internet. And the Asset Store is a Unity store where you get to download different kinds of models or programs or graphics or things that you're going to use in your Unity project. And it says store because there are definitely some things in here to purchase, but there are a lot of things here that are for free or for very, very little. So let's find something interesting. So here you get to define what you're going to search for, right? So I want I want a cat. So now there's a bunch. There's a $14 cat. I want to say, how about that $0 cat? That's what I'm looking for. And look, there's free cats. This is cool. So if I wanted to make a game that had, these different kind of cats. Some of these are weird. Oh, golden tiger. Definitely bring a tiger into my game. This is cool. So I'm gonna hit download. Right, and it'll take a second. I'll do its thing. Oh, interesting. I just got a window to sign into my Unity account. So I'm going to do that because it needs to know who you are. And part of the Unity Hub installation would have been registering an account. Okay, I had to log into my account, but now I'm logged in. I'm going to hit download. And here it comes. It said I purchased it, but it was free, so I purchased it for nothing. That's the price I like. So now that I have it downloaded, now I have a different button. The button changed to import. So I downloaded it, but it's not in my project yet, remember? So I'm going to go back to this folder. I can navigate here in the bottom left of the screen, assets. Those are the different type of folders, different type of pieces and elements that are in my project. I have materials, scenes, sounds. But now I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call it, I could call it characters, because Tiger can be a character. Maybe I'll call it models, because it's a 3D model. So let's import. It's probably going to come in its own folder. So it has, oh, here it is on another screen. I get a little pop-up window and it asks me to select. Usually I select all and then I hit import and then it's doing its work. It's copying the files, bringing things over to my, oh, I just saw something that said sound. So this thing actually has sound. And look, there's a new folder. They like to organize their own files their own way. It's called Tiger. So I'm going to go back to my scene because that's where I actually build my experience, right? So then I'm going to double click in the Tiger folder and see what's going on there. And then I have a materials folder. Okay. These are animation files, by the way. Or it's just a model. This might be the model. Oh, I see a tiger. He's really small. Let's make him bigger. He also came with all types of lights and things. I think we might get rid of him for our project. 1 second. What? Are you kidding me? So I'm in the rotation mode, but I can easily move to translation. There I go. I got a tiger. He's got a big circus ball to play with, and there's this weird bunch of blocks to play around with. Okay, so I feel like I'm only getting started. There's so much more that we can talk about. So much more here to play around with. I mean, well, let me show you one last thing. So once you've created the game, once you've started to develop and add more elements to it, you might want to play that game, right? And so I really haven't created a game. I've created like the beginnings of a world, right? So but when you actually add more to it, you can hit this play button and you get a preview, and it immediately switches to the game tab. And in my case, I have it set to full screen. And you're thinking like, what is going on? Oh, look, he's walking. That's awesome. I got to see this. So what happened? Why does that look so bad? And the reason why is because Mr. Tiger came over with his own camera. You know, look at all this stuff. Its own light. The lights are not bad, actually. Usually you don't want two cameras in a scene. So I'm gonna just delete mine for now. I can always create a new one if I want it. So delete. And then we'll use his camera. But I remember I made him big. I made him, that was the first thing I did, and I messed it up because he's too far away now. So let me try to back up a little bit because I want to get him to completely in the frame. Okay, look at that, that's kind of cool. You know, I need to kind of tilt it down. Whoops, that's not right. All right. Now we'll hit play. Let's see what it looks like. Look at that. He's moving around. He's scratching the world. He's going to start walking in a minute. Look at him. Boom. What? This is awesome. He roared. So these are all the different animation pieces that came with the Tiger. It's a whole nother class to talk about animation. We could spend a whole hour talking about how to use these animation files. But if you just wanted to get started and you wanted to make a world, then this is a great way to get started. You know, I just can't stop. So let's say, okay, this is something you have to know because this is like super easy. Okay, so let's say I wanted to change from this blue box to a black, solid black color. I could, so I would select the camera. I would come to here. I would choose solid color, and then you can already see a preview of what's happening in the back. But you don't see that here in the game. In the scene, you'll see that in the game. So I could choose the color that I liked, hit close, and then when I go to the game or I hit play, that's the view that I get, right? So this is a way to make that digital world, to create that kind of fantasy world using this free software called Unity. There's so much more. I mean, you can spend the entire summer. Actually, I challenge you to spend the entire summer messing around with this. You can spend hours and hours and learn about it. You can find YouTube videos to learn like basic programming. There's so much more that you can do. You just have a very incredibly productive summer learning about digital realities, learning about programming, just making something fun to work with and to play with and to show to friends and to learn more about. I mean, imagine, let's say you're making a project for school, and now all of a sudden you have a digital world that represents something that is important. Maybe you're doing a history project and you're trying to recreate you're trying to recreate New York in the turn of the century, or the Statue of Liberty, being transported to New York for the first, something like that, some historical event that we weren't around to see. And you could build it in this. I'm sure you could build this in like half an hour. You can go find a Statue of Liberty model and bring it into Unity and show that. And then you can either make an animation, you can do a screen recording, you can press play and watch the boat bring it over, and turn that in as part of your project. I don't know. There's a lot. This amazing. That's what I mean. You don't have to be there anymore. You can recreate what you're trying to talk about, and it can be grounded in the real world. It can be total fantasy. You saw some of the video clips from what people have made using this software. So anyway, I hope you got something out of this. I know it was fast and moving kind of crazy. Play it back. Try it a couple of times. Try out those tutorials in the Unity under Unity Hubs. It has a learning area. Look to YouTube. Try to solve problems like that. It's how I learned. There's also classes that you can pay for, but I say just play around in the beginning. Just play and make something that represents you. Make something that you're interested and excited for. And make something. That's the thing, is you don't have to be bored when you're learning something. You can have fun. You can be creative. You can it can be hard, and still you're like, I got to figure this out, and get really tough about it, and like not give up until you figure it out, and ask for help. And show a friend this video and say, hey, I want to do this too. You can work together. It's a great way to partner with someone. It's a great way to learn, is to learn with someone else. Anyway, so I can talk about this all day. I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you accept my challenge to try to download the software and try to make your own digital reality.